I wanted to sneak over there and haven't been able to.
Yeah, there was a really good panel also on kind of Indiana.
I wanted,
That was a good one.
I wanted to see that one, so
Yeah, we've been watching the stream.
I guess that's true. You don't have
Because
to.
Lee will ask me a question and I have to act like I saw it otherwise.
Oh, do you know Lee well?
Yeah, I run the Center on Representative Government, which is Lee's center.
Oh, I
It's his
see.
original center on Congress. So,
Okay,
yeah. But no,
fantastic. Well, it's good to meet you. It's weird that it's taking us this long.
I don't know.
We have Jeff Underwood on the screen, who nothing starts without Jeff Underwood in this legal regime, but it's being time. Shall we go ahead, Jeff, and let you kick it off?
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome.
We have anybody, let me just ask, I'm sorry, Jeff, do we, and Andrew, thank you for running the Zoom stuff. If there is anybody on, we welcome you on the Zoom too. So Jeff, take it away as
Yes.
incorporator. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I'm Jeff Underwood. I'm the incorporator and the registered agent for the City of Bloomington Capital Improvements, Inc. And I'd like to welcome you and open the organizational meeting of this group. As the first order of business, I would like to appoint the following individuals to the board. And that is Mick Renheisen, Sarah Dansman, John West, and Valerie Pena. Welcome. Do you all accept to be appointed to the board?
I do.
Thank you for that. And as my next and last official order of business in this meeting, I would like to nominate the following two people as officers, and that would be Mick Renheisen as president and Valerie Pena as vice president. I would like to have a motion from the board in a second.
So moved.
And seconded, Sarah Bowerly Danson.
And
Is there
we'll set
any-
this. No, thanks.
Is there any discussion?
Only that I'm glad it wasn't me.
Well, there are some other positions and that will come up later. So
Oh,
Uh, hearing no discussion, could I call for a roll call vote?
Josefa, maybe you can call the roll of, if you have all four of them. Josefa is serving as secretary and taking the minutes. Josefa Madrigal, chief of staff at the mayor's office.
Okay, so, Mick Renison,
Yes.
Valerie Pena,
Yes.
Sarah Derwin, Dansman,
yes, but my last name is Bowerly Danson.
thank you, sorry about that.
That's okay. It's confusing.
And John West,
Yes.
Motion
Thank you.
passes unanimously, and with that, I will pass the baton to Mick as the new president of the corporation. Thank you all.
There you go.
Well, there you go. Well, that didn't take long. No.
Just like snap.
So we have an agenda. We now have directors appointed and officers appointed, and it looks like the next piece of business is adopting bylaws, which I realize that some of you just were handed. So I would refer to you about whether that's something we need to defer a few minutes and have other reports while you have a chance to read that. Maybe that's the best use of our time. Is that all right with all of you? We have a report from the mayor's office with updates, and that gives you a chance to peruse and ask questions about bylaws. We can come back to that item.
And maybe we can help explain too, the bylaws were developed, I don't know, draft bylaws were developed a month or so ago by council's office, and we've worked with all of us to try to identify them. They do, if you want us to run through them, we can. It's a 5-member board. We should note the city council will be naming somebody to the board, we expect, and just haven't had time, not anything, they didn't do anything wrong, but it's just been the pacing of this and them getting to that on their agenda. But so the bylaws have 4 members appointed by the mayor and 1 by the city council. It's just pretty typical nonprofit set of bylaws. One of the unusual parts about it is we do officially and formally embrace operating under the open door laws to have public meetings, to have public records, I think we commit to public comment at meetings, just to make sure everybody's felt comfortable with that.
Noticing.
And public notice of meetings. Mike, is there anything else I should know about that?
All that's required by the open door law. I mean, we can get into the real ugly nuances of the open door law, but anything that's required by the open door law, the board's bylaws require the board to comply with that.
May I just ask as a matter of practice, how we'll do that? This body would have some liaison from the city to help us make sure we're not in violation of that and are accommodating to all of those procedures.
Yeah, that's right. I think we'll have some staff member at the city like we would with any other board or commission at the city who's responsible for preparing
Public engagement
notices.
director will be doing that.
The public engagement director.
Been assigned, and they are late getting here because they had another, they'll be here before too long, I think.
Okay, great, thank you.
The only other thing I thought might be worth mentioning, I think we have, the bylaws are designed, you can amend the bylaws, but there are certain things that cannot be amended with just your decision. You can't change the open door rules just by this group. I don't think can change the appointment process, is that right?
I think that's correct. That would require, I think that would require a modification of the articles of incorporation.
Yeah. Any change to provision of bylaws affecting the transparency of the corporation's meetings and records, and any amendment that alters the number or appointment of directors must be approved by the mayor and the council, in addition to the director. But generally, that's at the very end. Those are protected, I guess, as it were, so that council and the mayor, if you're going to expand the number or anything like that, or change the open door status, that has to get approved by the mayor and the council. Otherwise, it's pretty traditional.
So it does say in Article 4, under Section 1 about the officers, that in addition, there'll be a secretary and a treasurer, so we will need to elect those.
We
as well.
will, we just haven't
Done that.
cleaned that and wait maybe until the fifth person gets added, and then they can be the same person, I think, to secretary treasurer. One thing we also were gonna do is, and Jeff, is Jeff gone?
Boy.
I don't know.
There he is.
Jeff, I believe when we appointed the members, Mick and Valerie were gonna be the 2-year members. We have to designate of the 4 of you, 2 is 2-year and 2 is 1 year, just to keep it staggering. You were gonna have the.
Yes, I will go back and amend my appointments, that the 2-year appointments will be Mick Renheisen and Valerie Pena. And the remaining 2 members will be the 1-year terms. And those will be effective January 1st and run through December 31st, matching the fiscal year of the body.
Amended motion, I suspect we need to vote on that as an amended motion, correct?
Yes.
Okay, do we have a motion to accept the amendment?
I'll make that motion.
I've just got a question. So are those appointments renewable?
Yes. Yes, they just create this, saying there's no term limit in the bylaw,
And that was my next question. There's no,
not in them. I don't believe so. I haven't looked at them for a minute, but
I didn't see one.
yeah. And it's not in any indication of 2-year versus 1 year, anything other than we had to assign them.
that's right, got staggered.
Yeah, so we get a staggered. And I think the council appointment will be a 2-year. For that. We got a motion.
There's a motion and not a second, and we'll always have discussion after the second, so we won't vote until there's been an adequate amount of discussion. So we had a motion on the amended item for the terms of the officers, in terms of the board.
I'll second that motion.
And now, is there any other discussion or questions? All right, then we'll vote on the motion to amend as Mr. Underwood presented. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Same sign. Passes unanimously.
Can you talk to us a little bit about Article 7 and handling of funding, checks and deposits, et cetera, just give me a clip note version of who does what.
I think the short answer, John, would be we haven't set that up in any way yet. There's not gonna be any funding or money until we have a few other steps we'll want to take. But you are authorized. I think this is a pretty general 501c3 authority, but you're not going to get any money until some public body awards it here, RDC, mayor's office, or council, and that all has to take a lot of steps.
Right. Okay. But that the accounts and such are gonna be managed by, I mean, I understand who has the oversight, but who has who's.
Yeah, I don't think we've decided that. It could be managed through the city for a while, or it could be set up separately. My guess is we'll step our way into that piece by piece, but
Have to be determined.
yeah. I'd be happy to jump into the next section if you want to, while we still, before adopting them, if you wanted, as you suggested. Mr. Chair, or if you want
We're all still okay with the mayor walking us through some of the other agenda items. We can come back to approving the bylaws or questions about those later then.
remember to come back.
I will remember that.
I do want to add one thing. We have begun the application for the 501c3 not-for-profit through the federal government. We were advised by council to wait until members were appointed to help us flesh that out. So I will continue working on that. And when we have a final draft, we'll bring that to the board for adoption, and then we'll be submitting that to the Internal Revenue Service. It'll take some time for that to be reviewed and approved, but you are duly constituted. But I did want to let you know that we would be working on that as well.
Thank you.
Shall we jump in then?
Please.
And just as a reminder, to get to discussion of authority and purpose, you are as Mr. Underwood said, an incorporated nonprofit entity. Right now, you are not 501c3 designated tax purpose by the federal government until all that happens, but you're a nonprofit corporation. So first, thank you for serving, each of you. I know you are really busy and doing many other things, and I want to thank you for your agreement to be part of this. This is a big deal for the city, and I thought I'd just give some quick kind of background to why you are here, why we asked you, and appreciate your service. Some of this is in a memo that you have in more detail that was shared with the council and the public last month, or was it January. But we find ourselves as a city working on a number of major projects that are of huge value and benefit to the city, but are also not for city functions. They're a little different from what we do day in, day out. And that particularly relating to city-owned land and structures, where we have come into ownership purposefully, accidentally, but we have substantial ownership of land and structures that are really important to the city, benefit the city, but not core typical city functions. And examples of that would include the Buskirk Chumley, the Waldron, the Trades District, and the mill, and all of that land, Hopewell, the 24 acres of the hospital site. Those are examples of ownership that really important, but unusual. And that drives things for us, that they demand attention, of course, and they're actually, some of them are going to demand substantial attention and even more attention coming years. Particularly Trades District and Hopewell have been major projects, and they're not going to slow down over the next several years. And that meant we really had to look at, as we're dealing with those now, our staff are dealing with those. We're using contractors to help us move those projects along. And as that accelerates, we really need to think about what is the best way to manage those projects. We really thought about three options. One, keep bringing in more city staff, just bring in more city resources to manage the next 10 years of Hopewell, next 10 years of Trades District. Two, activate the redevelopment commission, which is and Sarah, you sit on that, of course, and the redevelopment commission is often the owner of those properties. And we could say, let's build capacity at the redevelopment commission. Three, let's create a purposeful organization whose mission is to do those projects or some of those projects. I won't go into the long detail. The memo talks about it a little bit, but the first two ideas worth thinking about, but they weren't ideal for various reasons. And we really settled on a 501c3 that is focused on advancing those major projects or project in a way that benefits the city, but also lets us not have to build that capacity inside city government. There's some advantages too to 501c3, maybe more flexible, maybe more nimble, can bring people on and off in different ways. So that's why you're here, is to help us advance those major, some or one of those major projects. And I want to be upfront, we need to plan this together. We do not have, there's not a 9-page plan somewhere that says how this is going to happen with you. It's really recognizing that we have a bunch of staff who've been working really hard on this, continue to, but we need help and more resources. And we want to work with you to figure out how to do that. I don't expect city staff will stop thinking about these things, but we also want to think, how can we operationalize them best? So of those, and I thought I'd just read a mission statement was, and it's not your mission statement, but when I put this out to the public, I said, I'm hopeful we'll be able to identify a mission statement somewhat consistent with this. And I'll just read it just so you can hear it. Saying, on behalf of the Bloomington City Administration and the wider community, the nonprofit will provide stewardship and leadership to special projects as assigned, including potentially in the field of arts expansion, jobs and technology development, and housing development to accomplish community and administration objectives for social, cultural, and economic development and redevelopment. It's pretty generic, but it's meant to help advance the community's interests in the administration's focus on that. So on those three areas, let me just talk really briefly. The Trades District, I inherited when I became mayor. That was already underway, but we have accelerated certain things there. The mill, there's housing there, there are 2 other buildings in redevelopment now, there's another one being planned. But as you probably know, we have also in the redevelopment commission provided funding to an entity to kind of take that leadership, a combination of the mill and their hiring of John Fernandez. That is going fine, we think, and may not need a lot of attention right now from this group. The arts area is another area that we had a big report come out last year, recommended some consideration of that. I think I view that area as simmering, and there's a lot of unknowns about that. There was some question, should there be a new facility? We, the administration, I think, need to do a lot of conversation with the arts community about that. So I consider that also kind of on simmer, unknown. We don't have an immediate plan like the Trades District, but unknown. Hopewell, however, is right in front of us like a big train. Some of you have been involved in that extensively, and that is the area where we really are encouraging this group to think about how can we together accelerate that project. And I won't go into the details of that in a minute. I'll talk more about Hopewell itself, but that's an 8-minute description or whatever of kind of what we hope this group can do. Can I answer questions, or you want to comment on that, or anybody else want to supplement?
The only thing I was going to say, so as we potentially, the city might see other projects or activities that could come up those could end up coming to this group to say, hey, this is something we'd like you to add or consider adding.
I think that's fair. The name of capital improvement is kind of thinking about how are we improving our infrastructure, these major kind of projects, like who knows what could happen next year, right? And this body, I think, we hope would be, could consider that kind of, yeah.
Other questions? Mayor? Mentioned purpose, maybe a little more on authority. Is that part of what you
That's
want to
great.
present here as well?
Sure, that's great. And I didn't talk about that because we don't really know. I think there are big questions like, should this entity become an owner of the property? Maybe, I don't know. I mean, from my perspective, that's a good question. Should this entity will need resources, financial resources and staff and or professional resources. You're all volunteers and to the extent you get active leaning into helping lead Hopewell, to that extent, you're going to need resources to help steer that. We currently do that from the administration with both personnel and contractors. Some of that could be shifted over to this group. And again, we want to work with you on figuring out how to do that most effectively. You know, Alex Crowley, as the head of economic sustainable development, is going to continue to think about all this. John Zodi is Bloomington Housing Authority are all going to have their views on this, but I think we will want to explore what authority should be given to this. The city council will have a view on that, presumably too, about if you get an appropriation, that's possible too from city government, which would go through the budget process and city council. If there's transfers, anyway, so both the administration and the city council and RDC will be partners in thinking about that.
Is it safe to conclude at the moment we are an extension of the administration with representation from the city council yet to be appointed, development commission, which is obviously a key cog in the entire, any of the steps that might be taken by this group. And our residents, of course, have a lot to say. The wider community is going to have a lot to say. We know, for example, the Hopewell project had extensive public engagement, producing a master plan. I would assume we would use that as the beginning of our framework for any discussion about Hopewell, and things need to be updated because it's been a while. Then this group would entertain those things and then bring that back to the administration, the redevelopment commission, council, and any other bodies that have some interest in that work that's moving forward. Is that kind of a fair assessment?
Absolutely. And it makes a good reminder that you could also, as a group, decide you want advisory entities. You know, there is, for example, the Hopewell Steering Committee that has been in existence for quite some time. We may discuss, should there be such an entity ongoing? And if so, do they report to you? Do they, help you? If you were to get into another kind of project, a big arts effort, you may want a group that helps you bring more community voices. Because we've meant this not to be a great big board of all interests, but an operating board that can focus on, moving big projects forward. And you may want other advisory groups.
The reference to a 501c3 sometimes makes people think we're going to raise money, fundraise. I do not understand that to be a task that this group, it doesn't mean it couldn't happen at some point in the future, but you don't envision that's a primary function of this group at this time.
We do not. Certainly for your operational budget, the expectation is that you're kind of standing in the government shoes and would get that. Now, not to say in any of these big projects, there may be partnerships and alliances with other entities that could bring resources to it. And in a way, maybe you would be better at aligning that than a government asking that. But in terms of, you're not going to ask, we're not expecting you or this group to raise money for operating expenses.
Ask Gayla.
No golf tournaments. We have to go back for fundraisers.
I think I made it clear that on the phone conversation, I wasn't fundraising.
You're investing.
To a multitude of your points, we probably, at least at this meeting, should set up, and it will need to be flexible, but we got to put some of this on a timeline. Because if we're gonna be spending a bunch of time getting ready to get ready, and I mean, we could be a year out having some of these same conversations, and we can't afford that, so. I'm not sure how we get that done, but we certainly need to have some benchmarks.
Well, I think one of them is prioritizing what projects we know are out there. If Hopewell is going to be the first.
Well, I was just thinking about our organizational
Oh, from an
structure. I hadn't hit that part yet.
Okay,
I'm talking about things that we have to do internally to, things that Mayor said we should be thinking about, talking about. We got to get that in writing, and we have to, know how we're going to operate. Know what our responsibilities are, for sure, what our authority is, for sure. Be able to move on with a clear landscape.
Which, I mean, then my question is, how do we think about should we be expecting in terms of an appropriation from somewhere and at what time? Because it seems to me that the first step in terms of getting staffing up and running is having money to hire an executive director. And I'm just kind of curious how much there's been movement on that, or what your thoughts are with respect to that and timeline.
I think it's a great question. It kind of moves us into the next section perhaps, because at the moment, city administration is providing the resources to organize and draft and, do all these things. I think what I foresee is that, assuming we move into the Hopewell space, that focus will then raise the questions. Do we want an executive director here? How quickly? How do we get that? Or are there some other options to think about that? The city is right now retaining consultants, engineering companies, our own staff, of course, working on Hopewell. And we want to give a kind of an update on what's on the table right now. And I think maybe in the context of that specific project, it'll help us figure out, how do you move? What do you need? What makes sense to you? What do you not want? Right? You want to take on the engineering contract right now? Probably not for phase, for building the roads and in there. But what does make sense and how quickly? And the money, I think, can follow that.
I think it's safe to say Hopewell is our front and center project. The others that you mentioned at the moment are simmering or have dedicated resources that don't require our attention in any immediacy.
Yes.
So Hopewell is our immediacy, and we're trying to get real focused on how we can be most helpful to our community and to the administration. Then why don't you kind of fill it at the 30,000-foot view? I know there'll be many more details, and as this group establishes a regular meeting schedule that we'd like to have, we'll probably craft an agenda that gets the many departments that have their fingers on the project to come and give us more details. But at the moment, I think it would benefit us and anyone watching this where Hopewell is and what you'd like to share with this group as sort of our primary task that we can start to chew on as a brand newly formed board that's met for 30 minutes.
If I could add on to that also in that context, some more information about, and maybe this is kind of for down the line, but knowing precisely, how much city employee time is spent on Hopewell.
They're not allowed to tell you that. No, of course.
And where see the biggest challenges
Yeah.
for the city administration that
Yeah.
you think, because obviously there was a forcing function that made you really start to think about this board. So
Great.
what is it in particular that you think a board is well situated to help with on this particular project that I think might help us understand a little bit more of why this structure why now? And then also have the community understand as well.
Great, I'll try to get into that too. Should we move to item 5 then? And I'll do brief comments and then Mayor Catherine Carmichael, Deputy Mayor, is also here and can walk through a little bit. We have a very brief PowerPoint to share that may be helpful too. But so, you know, Hopewell is literally a once in a century opportunity for a city like ours to have 24 acres downtown that we get to redevelop. Is extraordinary and it's a huge opportunity and we really want to do as well as we can with it. A new neighborhood that we get to design and encourage in the heart of our downtown. We have several goals that we had a major master planning process you referenced. It's been 10+ years in the making, I think. And now that we own the property, the final piece we expect to get transferred this year. The master plan process has explicitly talked about the importance of affordable housing in that mix. The master plan process identified primarily housing, 800 to 1,000 units of housing that we could put there, and wanted to emphasize we got to make sure a lot of people can live there from all kinds of walks of life. So affordability. We've also been very explicit about wanting to make this a neighborhood for the future, a sustainable neighborhood. Wonderful connectivity in our community. How else can we make it the kind of neighborhood that will stand the test of time? And 50 years from now, people say, they really made a bunch of good decisions as they built this out and they steered the development of this property. And third, we've also said we want to be conscious about it being a beautiful place, a lovely place to be and to go through and to be aware of the impact on the quality of life and the style of architecture and just the look of the place. Those are all really important. Accessibility to all as well. And so those big pictures are in front of us. I'm going to mention 2 other things, and then I'm going to hand it to Deputy Mayor Carmichael. When we talk about affordability in the city, we think very hard and are committed to long-term affordability. If you look at the problems on the coast of affordability and pressures, often that's because any affordability that's created lasts for 10 years or 15 years or even 30 years, but then it goes away. And cities last a long time. And those affordability issues, if we can chip away and make long-term affordable things, 99 years length of the structure, that you don't lose it. So we're very interested in that as a concept, long-term affordability. And then lastly, and some of you know this very directly, we bought this land so that we could be in the driver's seat. And that's an unusual thing for a city too. You all know the city is restricted and so we can't do inclusionary zoning, for example, under state law, but we can, if we own the property, decide under what terms it's transferred. I think something for you to think about as well is how do you keep the community, maximize the long-term benefit to the community for having bought this land. It's not at all crazy to me to think about, well, what would be the value of 50 or 75 years from now? People like us had the chance as a community to say, is this doing what we want? Because we won't get that over most of us. And we have that authority here to really think how do we protect the long-term interest of this community in where and how this amazing neighborhood develops and evolves over time. So if it's all right, I'm going to hand it over to you to kind of give the more practical update about what's going on and where we are and jump in with questions anytime.
Happy to do it. Tickled to get to be a part of this. This is an exciting day. We've been kind of solemn so far, but this is really a big. And we're kicking off. So I just want to add my thanks to the mayors for your wisdom, talent, and expertise that you're bringing to this project and sharing with our community. We're very lucky to have you working on this on our behalf. So thank you so much. This is a very short, I promise, slide deck. Sarah Bowerly-Dansman as RDC member has already seen this. You'll notice there's a date of February 6th. I stole this, but it's a recent enough update that I think it makes sense to share with you just to kind of both inform you and then anybody who might see this recording later so everybody knows where we were in the moment in time that this organization started its work. So We'll go ahead and jump to the agenda slide, and I'm not a slide reader. So we're going to hit the highlights on all of these, and we will make the slide deck available to you later if you want to have it for any other use or review. We'll talk about the vision, the schedule we've got overall, and that's of course always subject to change, progress that we've made so far, challenges that we're already experiencing, and of course, what's coming up next in the process. I'm going to be a little more, we can go to the next slide, Andrew. I'm going to be a little more touchy-feely than the mayor. That's often my role around here. So I want to begin by saying how appropriate I think it is that this neighborhood for residents is being, the development of that is being led by you, also residents for residents. And I think that just makes so much sense. And it plays into the Hopewell neighborhood vision. You know, the mayor mentioned the master plan. That is absolutely foundational to the work that you'll be doing going forward, and the work that we hope to support. Also, this was a very robust engagement experience. So many people involved, great work. We had outside help come in, and I think that what we landed on was really exceptional. You'll see there are 3 bullet points here, but inclusive, sustainable, and beautiful are what you really need to take away from this slide. I would also mention that recently Andrew Krebs and I developed new signage for the sites, and I think that the signage is very indicative of the kind of feeling that we hope to elicit from people as both decide about living there or building there or developing there, and just how they feel in the space. You know, we have new welcome to Bloomington signs, and some of them say everyone belongs here, and that's kind of the underlying idea behind this. But one of the signs, we have 3 different focuses. One of the signs says, be an earth mover, build here, change lives. Another one is Bloomington's next great neighborhood. There's a place for you here. And the third one is Bloomington's newest neighborhood, a new hub in the heart of the city. And that's a catchphrase that you've heard throughout this process. And we're going to keep talking about that because that's exactly what it is. But we'll be installing more of that signage going forward too. We want, as more and more land becomes available to us. So let's go to the next slide, the schedule update, if we can. This starts in 2018, but of course, as John West can testify, this started long before that. So we've just chosen to begin here with May of 2018. You can see how that unfolds. I would say that the December 2023 may be inaccurate. We've been speaking with IU Health Bloomington, and there is some discussion. Things are going very well with the demolition and of course the preparation of the land for conveyance. So much so that there's an opportunity and a possibility for an early conveyance. So we'll be having those discussions beginning the week of the March 20th. We have invited, I guess, President Renaison, is that your title, to participate in that first meeting. And of course, our expectation would be that then he would involve the rest of the board in that. So very exciting, we think, and really looking forward to moving forward expeditiously there. So the next one, Andrew, thank you. Yeah, thank you. It's just the update on the progress. The steering committee, again, several of you have attended those meetings over time. We do have a new co-chair. We're very pleased to announce that Senator Shelley Yoder has agreed to serve as co-chair. So she's a little bit busy right now at the state legislature. So the next meeting for that group won't be until after they adjourn. So it will be in May, and we'll keep you posted on that. I don't think we have a firm date on that yet. But as soon as we do, everybody will be included in that, and we very much anticipate you all attending and probably taking a leadership role in that now. Happy to hand that over. Yeah, but they're good. Outreach with neighbors continues. You can see the other progress that's already been made. small setback with, one of the, when we let the first, bid, the East Infrastructure Phase 1 East, that was over budget. So, we took another look at that, put it out, and it's actively rebidding right now.
Maybe just remind Phase 1 East, everybody may not know exactly what that is, but east of Rogers between First and Second. That whole big block that's, it has Centerstone in one corner and the rest is basically vacant.
Right, and we've taken, as you are likely aware, we've taken early possession of that. They made that available to us early.
Good signage on that corner too. Did good.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Moving forward with core, we're very happy about that, hoping that that will be affordable housing. That's been a challenge to keep that building, as you can imagine. The steering committee knew it would be, and they were right, but it's, we think it's the right thing to do. The demolition, I'm sure everybody has noticed, has really come along kind of shockingly quickly. And, I have to hand it to the folks who are in charge of this project, because they've really done the demolition right. They recycled everything they possibly could. It made it take longer, but they did it the right way. So we're very grateful for them doing it the Bloomington way, which is the right way. So we're pleased about that. The first development RFI released soon. I don't think
It's done now.
it has done
Yeah.
now. Yeah, right. So that's out, ready to get responses. Go ahead.
Well, to say that's for the, what we call parcels 8, 9, and 10, which are below First Street, west of everything below First Street, which are kind of the least dense, probably. It includes some little strips where there's single family and old medical buildings. It does include what we call the brutalist building, 714 South Rogers, and everything west of there. That is out on the street saying, who wants to help us develop that? And that's going to come back to your question, like, why now? Right, in a minute.
Right. So then a couple of things related to funding. Obviously, federal funds, we think that there's a great opportunity for federal funds for this project, especially the way we're approaching it. The mayor mentioned sustainability. There's a lot of federal money available for those kinds of projects that we hope to identify and apply to this. And then additional grant money too. Challenges, there are 3 listed. I would add one more to that, and that is security. It's a constant concern with those sites. We've had some issues with that. We do have a security company that keeps an eye on things, but it's going to continue to be a challenge. So I think it's only fair to put that on your radar too. Thank you.
No, there we go.
And there we go. This is an exciting slide. I think it does a nice job of illustrating what we've just been talking about. You can see the parcels, how they line out. There's where infrastructure needs to be funded, has been funded, unfunded parks projects. So you've got your work cut out for you folks. See, yeah, this is where the rubber meets the road. It's the map that will be driving a lot of this. So what do you want to
May I
say about
comment
it?
on
You
that?
may, sir.
So, and Sarah, as the representative of the RDC knows, there's been a budget, I think, we would say of about $25 million that has been approved by the RDC that covered the purchase of the land, which is about $6+ million. And then major infrastructure investments to regrid it, to get it ready for development and to move this forward. That's what the blue is. That's paid. We focused on that eastern block, that Phase 1 East, 1, 2, and 3, because we think that's the soonest we can get on the market and developing. But we have infrastructure needs that we haven't put an exact order of magnitude on them yet that are going to continue. Of course, the hope is that the development investments, as they come, will help fund those ongoing investment infrastructure needs, but that's a complicated process. We have designed fully the infrastructure on Phase 1 East. We're planning to design at enough of an aggregate level for the rest of it that we can talk intelligently to developers and get estimates of that. But that's a big complicated challenge in front of all of us about how to move that forward. It may take fronting some investment to do it all at once and then getting repaid over time.
Ask about one of the challenges was, right away. Or which ones of those are still unresolved? Is it over on the parcels 1, 2, and 3 side? That's all clear now.
Phase 1 East is all approved as far as I know, unless somebody knows differently, but we do not have the main, we call Hopewell West, 4, 5, 6, 7. That is not all platted out yet and are being figured out. There are some details in phase 1 East, but the council has made it clear they want to see alleys in this. And so we're working really hard on that.
Yeah. Some balancing going on. Make that possible. We move forward then?
Anybody else have any questions?
I guess the last thing I'd say about that unfunded parks, that basically is meaning that the main design of the master plan was that major greenway. We have designed and funded the eastern half of it, but we have a rough design, but not much. We haven't funded the western half of that, though that's the less intense half of that too. Most of the major investment is on that eastern half, right at the B line.
I have a request or a question. If you have particular other communities and other places that you have looked to for kind of guidance and inspiration, if you would be willing to kind of put that if you would be willing to share that with us, I think that would be very helpful, because I think one of the things for me is that I'm trying to kind of envision this, and I have some ideas of neighborhoods in other places that I'm thinking of, but I'm not sure kind of how much they align with the city's vision and the steering committee's vision. So if there's anything like that, that would be really fantastic.
I think the ULI report they helped us.
Urban Land Institute.
Yeah, Urban Land Institute, sorry. They helped us develop the master plan. I think that would probably be really helpful along those lines, and that's available online, but we'll send it to you so you have it handy.
That sounds good.
You bet.
I think the master plan, SOM's master plan, augmented that with some of the data you're looking for, Sarah, that has referenced communities where I remember in the presentations, they were referencing communities. So I think you'll find some of that in the master plan as well.
Yeah. Shall we move on? Thank you. So we've been referencing the master plan quite a lot. This list on the right are things that residents identified during the master planning process as things that they wanted to see available in the development. And so you can see what those are and some suggested locations for those. And you can also see, this is a nice map. You can see some massing suggestions where the current building trades park is, Kroger, some important landmarks there that kind of put everything in perspective. And I always love a massed example. It just makes it so much easier to conceptualize for me when you see a really good example. Now, will the end product look exactly like this? No, it won't. But it is again a good example of what some potential massing that might make sense. And as you see, it kind of transitions back into the existing McDowell Gardens neighborhood. Any questions on that?
And I would just note Parks is very much thinking about that building trades park, how to activate that. It's a huge resource. And you see there the parking garage, we haven't explicitly mentioned, of course, that's being retained with 500 or some spaces, which is a great asset to have as this all gets built out as well.
Okay, to the next slide. So this one is titled development. I would also think of it in terms of a slide that talks about goals. And these are, again, things that came out of the master planning process, as well as influence from the administration as far as, what are our goals? What do we want as a community? Who do we want to be? Who do we want to attract? Do we want this homogeneous or really diverse. And so we think that each of these values is reflected in the master plan. Go ahead.
Can you
And
back up?
you bet.
Want to make sure I understand where you've got at the top housing, 20% affordable. Define that a little bit. What is that as a percentage?
Yeah,
of what?
I think what we actually mean, is 20% of all the units. We want to be either a mix of workforce and affordable, under 120.
Okay.
I don't, we want to make as much opportunity available as we can. It's all a question of money, the market, what we can do. I will share with you, the more affordability you're going to get is based on the more units you can get in there. And so that's a factor too. Yeah.
Anything else on that? Oh, okay, we'll go ahead. All right, what's coming next? Everything you see there is coming next. We'll have additional RFIs going out. I don't believe we've retained an engineer yet for the design of Jackson
There.
Street University.
I can't remember. It's very imminent.
Yeah. The land transfer we've talked about. There's a park naming opportunity along University Street. That's always fun. And of course, the use of 714 South Rogers, that really remains up in the air right now. That's a very sturdy building. It's as those brutalist buildings are, that's just the way they're built. So to decide not to use that would certainly have a cost implication, and remodeling it in such a way that it's appropriate for future use would also have a pretty serious cost consideration. So some decisions will have to be made there. The Trahan Art Study, if you'll remember our earlier slide, one of the things identified in that slide was a gallery and art studio space in the new development. So we'll want to work and refer to the Trahan Art Study as we think about that going forward. And you are the 501c3 potential, so that we can check off. So I think that's our last slide. And
Can you go back to bullet 2? And clarify what you mean there, because there's already been some things done with that.
We have to offer, correct me if I'm wrong, council, public. If we're going to transfer the land to development, I think we have to make an offering to the public to buy that land. Isn't it?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay, so it's important, but it's a formality.
We have a partner.
We have a
who's
partner.
ready to go.
I thought we did.
Credits. I wanted to, and you asked this 10 minutes ago now, sorry, but I think you asked why now, what's happening now? What's happening now is we are starting a process of several years of development choices and development partnerships. And we have been doing the city side to master plan, infrastructure, prepare the field for investment of $100+ million. That needs to start now. And that's an intense process. It's a long process, multi-year process. And we are not good at that. The city is not a developer typically. And so part of the need for now is to get a group that's thinking about partnering with developers, partnering with the investors who we need, implementing the vision, and that is ramping up now and over the next several years. And that's really, I think, the impetus for wanting to launch you now is to help be at the table. That's a hard thing for a steering committee to do. It's a hard thing for our administration staff to do. So that's, I think, what's right.
it'll be easy for you.
Through the process of developing the plan for this 501c3, are there other examples in other communities that use this that maybe we could speak to see what works for them, what doesn't, sort of what their process was for standing up?
Yes, the short answer is there are many examples of basically redevelopment arms of different cities. Some of them are literally capital improvement boards. Some of them are convention and visitors that do more than that. They do other development. Some of them, and we did not have a single model of that.
Okay.
There's no list of three even that say, hey, these three did it right, but we're happy to look at that with you. But and it's, you know, I mean, you can think about transportation authorities or the airport development authorities or
Right.
places like that that have that. You know, having a 24 acres to redevelop is a wonderful opportunity. And there are entities that done it, but we don't have a specific, at least I'm not aware of a specific.
Well, that's a good segue into something that John West and I learned yesterday. So full disclosure, Alex Crowley invited John and I as representatives, anticipating that we would be on this group when it was formed. And because John was on the steering committee for Hopewell, as was Valerie, and I was the city liaison to the project as deputy mayor. Alex asked us to sit in on some of the requests, RFI respondents for potential owners reps for this project. So we've spoken with 4 of those entities so far. I think we have another one scheduled next week, and we'll report back out to all of you. Of course, one of those entities just yesterday mentioned they helped stand up a 501c3 to do a project in College Park, Maryland, just like what
Just
we're-
like this.
just like this. So there's an example of one that exists that we just learned about that we might be show that we would pick them as our owner's rep, but we know now there is an entity, at least in one city, another college community that has used model to stand up a capital improvement project.
And there's assistants out there, professional assistants, which we didn't really know.
Yeah.
Existed, so.
Yeah, I think, you know, doing a land survey would be super useful here too. At least that's my the researcher. See what's happening
Yes.
before.
Why reinvent the wheel?
Right.
Yeah.
We should reinvent the wheel and others. So we'll.
But also what doesn't work, because I'm
Right.
sure that there are
Mhm.
examples of 501c3s that have been stood up that did not work well for these sorts of projects. So we want to make sure that we learn the positive examples and stay clear of the negative.
And they weren't all 501c3s either. They were just incorporated in like a capital improvement board. So that, you know, there's nothing special about our model.
Right.
You couldn't use some others.
And Val and I did a white paper for the mayor a while back, which also addressed capital improvement boards and how they function. For example, the one in Indianapolis does all of the improvements for the convention center, which seems to grow by hundreds of thousands of feet every couple of years up in Indianapolis. So there are other models like that we've done some research and
Would you be willing to share that?
Sure, absolutely.
I'll
And
just
then
add
when
it
you
to,
look-
I have it, I'll add it to the list of things, what you know, Lisa.
I just am really looking for more things to read.
I will.
Well, I think it's, you know, when you have to be really cognizant of the fact that the term CIB in every state is very different from each other. There is no singular definition for that and how they're structured and what they're allowed to do, not allowed to do. And that is somewhat, so Indiana has its own structure of how a CIB has to operate and such. And so that's, you know, so there are some limitations on that. But there are other cities too that have set up some other programs. The MAPS program that's in Oklahoma City always jumps to my mind as a really good example of some of this. So I think I'm all with you on the research. I'm all about who did it well, who did it not so well, and let's pick the in-betweens. And cherry pick what's really good out of that. So.
Might be useful, just the owner's rep process and next step could be one that tees up for this group, how we go forward. It's an alternative to immediate staff. And it's something we've been, as you know, we've been looking at for some time and didn't find it. I don't know if we'll find it this time, but it could be something that could quickly engage this group with professional help in that way.
Yeah, I do see that as one of the early action items for this group is to get an update once we finish the interviews and get that staff update from all of the players who have touched this project and have some responsibility for it now, so we get better informed. And then offer what the interview process has resulted in. If there's anybody we think is really well suited for this, then I think this may be our decision to recommend back to the administration. And again, we're working through that, how that works, but that may be one of our actions to try to really get to tackle the project in a meaningful way so we don't lose time. I would say that owners rep interviews started several years ago. And we spent a year and a half, what I call dancing with a dance partner that was not really interested in finishing the dance. But we learned a lot. And now the staff, since I've left in the role I was in, have come back to that. We learned a lot and now they've reconstituted the process. And I think the 4 people these we've interviewed so far, there's some encouraging signs that we may get a better, more direct response to what we were looking for. I'm not sure we knew what we were looking for.
Right.
More intentional. We kind of know what we need. You agree?
Well, I think we've learned a lot just listening to those folks respond to our questions, but more importantly to me was, you know, it's a world that I don't work in. I've never worked with an owners rep. It's always been a master planner. And so this is just a different ballgame. But clearly it's defined what they can do and they're out there and they're trained to do it. And there's really some quality people out there. So.
It's also probably important to note that there are 2 entities we the city is still under contract with. One is an entity that's doing the economic analysis of the site, and that's SB Friedman out of Chicago. City to continue to do that work for this project, and the other is firm that is kind of make sure we're moving forward, that the administration's goals are being met. And I understand both of those entities will continue to be a resource to our group. So that will be helpful, I think, to better understand as we meet and start to get into the meat of this. So.
Jazz helps the latter.
Jazz help, thank you. Different name when I was here.
Are we concerned about overlapping of responsibilities and maybe overpaying as we have too many people?
Well, yes, we want to make sure we don't do that, I would say. I think, again, we need to work this out. We need to figure this out. The city officials, city administration folks have worked very hard to move this forward. I think it is a really good time to hand over. We just don't know exactly what, exactly how and when. But it's a good time to begin that process. And I think we're just going to learn by doing, like, as we go forward, but we hope not to have, we don't have dueling advisors for sure. Yeah. Right.
Any other feedback or questions at the moment? We still have some unaddressed agenda items to get back to, but not before you all are satisfied with where we're at from the presentation that we received from the administration.
As cloudy as it was when I walked in.
The only other thing I might say is, just as a parallel project that is going on, is the Economic Vitality Project, where housing is clearly identified as one of the subject cores of that study. And so that, once again, would be probably another piece, which I can share from sitting on the steering committee with everyone, so you at least understand where that is going. Because this piece, this project is a huge part of answering some of that need.
Yeah, they did a really good job with that, or have been, or still doing. That's probably
Or
really
reading
good.
materials, Sarah.
Well, I do have a 5-year-old who sometimes has trouble sleeping, so.
First though.
Yeah. Okay, any other questions from the board? So we have not adopted the bylaws yet, and we have public comments.
I did want to mention as well, I think that the appointment of officers is supposed to happen at the first meeting, and there are a couple of unappointed officer positions. So, under state code.
Oh, is that right?
So the secretary and treasurer
Correct.
positions need to be appointed.
Would that not be one person?
They
Yes.
can, yeah, any individual member of the board may hold multiple offices.
Well, one of the two of you is getting that one, so. Any volunteers?
I'm happy to do it. Okay, just combine them. It doesn't make sense to have two, because they're not that active.
We'll be providing the horsepower.
That's helpful.
Thank you.
Then I'll-
Well, then I motion to, appoint.
Should we do the bylaws first, though, do you think, or does that?
Whatever order you want to do it.
Oh, okay.
Well, let's just take this one up since it's on the minds of our people right now. We're ready to make a motion.
Okay, thank you. I motion to appoint John West as secretary and treasurer of the board.
I will second that.
All right, motion in a second to John West as secretary treasurer of our not-for-profit. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Now we go back to the bylaws and questions that anyone might have if you've had a chance to. We're getting more into that.
Questions. One was with Article 12. So this one that we're going to be bonded. But I'm not a lawyer, and I know that we're bonded on RDC. So this is the identification clause. And that there will be insurance purchased by the corporate. I wasn't sure if that was just kind of standard or if that means that we are to be bonded.
Yeah, I can address those. So the articles of incorporation and the bylaws
Now you're figuring.
allow for bonding if that's their preference, that
Okay.
any member of the board hold a bond or somebody else hold a bond, they don't require it. And it's the same thing with insurance, the extent that you think it makes sense to procure insurance for the not-for-profit, that's something you're empowered to do both under state code and by application.
But we don't have any money, so we have to wait for
Not yet.
appropriation so that we can be insured.
Can you remind me what the RDC does?
The redevelopment commission?
Yeah.
The redevelopment commission is covered by the city's general insurance policy. So, so the city of Bloomington procures an absurd amount of insurance and the redevelopment commission's
Or that
assets
umbrella?
under that umbrella. That's correct.
Are we under that umbrella?
No.
No, there's something that we need to put on our agenda.
Potentially, but we would have to modify that insurance policy.
I was looking through also the questions that were posed by Constellation. They had a lot of concerns about the bylaws, and so I was just curious how much, like, for instance, they were concerned about things like the fact that we have, or is it in the bylaws? Article 2, Section 3B about the dissolution of the corporation and how it says that if the corporation is dissolved, that it is required to dispose of all assets in a way that kind of doesn't, like, in the way that we determine. And I guess my question is, and I think it is, like, is this just kind of standard language? Because I do think there is this issue of, especially if the 501c3 is so performing duties for the city and connected to the city, that it does raise a good point about making sure that, if for some reason the board was dissolved, that it wouldn't mean that the city would lose a bunch of assets that. So I was just curious if there had been a response to that or any discussion, or if this is just kind of standard language and we don't need to change it because, standard operating.
I guess that assumes that this organization has assets.
Yeah,
And I guess we have to address that if we end up with assets.
One, this is very standard language that's just used to reflect 501c3 requirements that if you go away, that your assets are treated that way. Two, I do think it's quite likely if and when any assets are transferred to this organization, that they will have strings on it. For
Got it.
example, the
Yes.
city would say, if we're giving you these assets, by the way, if you go away, we get them back or.
Right.
But.
So I mean, I think that's
It's not a
important for the record.
Yes.
I think that that's important for the record, for anyone listening or coming back to realize that there will be
Yeah.
ways in which the city, its citizens, its residents are protected.
Absolutely.
If that is the case, so that we don't need to worry about this. This isn't a problem from that.
Just to clarify as well, there are certain required provisions, and this is one of those required provisions under state code. So
Got it.
Great point, Sarah. Other questions on specifics in the bylaws?
No, I would make a motion to approve the bylaws.
A motion, do we have a second to approve the bylaws as submitted? Oh, wait, however long it takes.
Well,
That may be a while.
Studying, but a bit of a flyer, but I'm gonna second it.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions? Ready for action on the motion? All those in favor of adopting the bylaws as presented, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes as well. I think we are now up to public comment. I think we might have some viewers online, so we'll open it up there. We have, I believe we have staff members in the audience, unless you have any feedback for us as well, or questions, please.
I'm Stephen Lucas. I work in the council office. I'm the council administrator and attorney. I thought I should sit in today since the council hadn't yet had a chance to appoint its member. That may happen as early as next Wednesday. They have a regular session the 8th. Or the 29th, so I'm hoping we can get this sorted out by next week, and I'll try to pass along the information from today, and I'm guessing it was recorded, so we'll share this info with whoever the council.
And Steve, I know you'll do this, but if you don't mind sharing who that appointment is when you get it and contact information so I can reach out to them.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Isabel has a hand up.
Oh, great. Yeah, I thought there were some online participants.
Isabel should be able to unmute.
Councilmember Piedmont Smith, I see that you have your hand up. Hi, how are you?
Hello there. Thank you for serving. I just was curious about the land swap with Centerstone. I hadn't heard about that. Can somebody explain what that is?
Sure. Basically, on that parcel 1 east of Rogers Street, the ownership of Centerstone, and Mick may know this better than anybody because he dealt with it. There was, Centerstone had some kind of discontinuous pieces of ownership, and the city and Centerstone are swapping some so that Centerstone has basically a coherent quadrant of land, and the city has the other 3 quadrants around them to make it more. It's a very, both parties want to do it. It's helping them consolidate so they have their parking and their properties together. And some of that's owned by the county too, isn't it?
That is correct. There were just disassociated parcels with alleyways, bifurcating property lines that made it difficult for Centerstone to serve its clientele and staff best in terms of parking. And in the reconfiguration of phase 1 east, all that was remedied with willing partners on both sides. They were all willing to make this land swaps to make it work. Everyone came out with what they wanted. As I recall, that was largely negotiated before I left.
Okay, thank you very much. I thought at first, what is Centerstone gonna move and leave that whole block? No, okay, this makes a lot of sense. Just consolidating pieces. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for listening in today. Do we have any other public comment online?
Don't believe so.
Or that boring.
I think there might be just one other item of sort of practicality that we can address, and that's next meeting. And frequency of meetings. We don't have to determine the frequency piece yet, certainly, but if it's better for folks to say, you know, and I can reach out to you individually and say what day, time frequency works best for you, but I suspect we probably ought to get together in the not too distant future to get the updates that I heard some of us already request, kind of fill in the gaps from staff on what they're doing and where they stand. And those RFI interviews for owners reps should be done here in the next week or two. So
And our organizational procedures.
Yes.
Got to figure out how we're gonna operate.
so spring break's coming up. I know that influences calendars all over our community, and I suspect some of yours as well. Maybe sometime after that would be good. And would you just like me to reach out to you via email and kind of be thinking of
Doodle,
the Google
do a
Doodle
doodle
poll?
poll.
I'll do that. I'll work with that. Is Kaiser public engagement
She
director?
is, she's not here yet, but she'll work with you
I'll
directly.
work with Kaiser to do that. So that's how we'll manage scheduling things in the future. That's okay.
Yeah, and we'll probably, determine a set day of the week and time that works generally for everyone and organize your schedules around that.
Yeah, I think that makes sense if that's your preference. And then we can always cancel if we don't have any agenda items to
I don't see
address.
that happening anytime soon.
No, probably not.
But at least we have a stable date.
I prefer that.
Okay,
And
standing meetings.
Yes.
do we have a sense around the people about whether people want that to be during business hours or after?
I guess everybody has an opinion. I prefer during, but I don't have a set schedule for work, so it's easier for me.
I can do the, or after.
What do you,
All right, well, maybe just, I don't know, I need to think about it a little bit. I'm not entirely certain, but,
What time does the RDC?
There's a good number,
It's like
too.
5.
we meet at 5 on every other Monday.
My general style of leading is not to have exceptionally long meetings and rather get to the point and address and not try to overpopulate the agenda and try to solve the world's problems in one meeting, but sort of figure out the most important pressing thing, work on that, get it accomplished. Not be so simple-minded, we can't do more than 2 things at the same time, but still, let's make progress and not get overly concerned about too many things at once. So if that helps any, I do not see 2-hour meetings happening of any kind of frequency. Rather shorter to than that. Any objections? I don't think I did. I want to also acknowledge and thank my colleagues on this board. This is new. We have a chance to kind of shape it a little bit. It's always kind of interesting and exciting to do. And we can really do something, I think, exciting for our community with their input, of course, moving forward. And we'll be able to see how Hopewell develops for years to come as a result of some of the steps that hopefully will move forward in the process. Thanks to the city staff that have gotten us to this point. Mayor, thank you for asking us to serve.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
thank you.